Welcome to Identity Unboxed, where we provide mentorship and promote representation for Black professionals in the advancement of the Black community.
We are seeking guidance from exceptional Black leaders, scholars, and professionals with expertise in their respective fields.
We hope to foster a space that promotes authenticity, inclusivity, and restoration for our listeners while exploring the intersection of our personal and professional lives.
This project is a culmination of our lived experiences as young Black professionals to transform our life trajectories to overcome adversity and reach triumph.
Our intention is to inspire you on your path to discovering your purpose. And thank you all so much for being here. We are so grateful to the Chamber and the Young Professionals Network to have this opportunity. Brad and I came together with this project because of community. We met back at Tomoter High School years ago, and we have joked around about how our podcast actually came to be years ago when we were in our high school's cultural awareness club during a time where racial tension was really high, and 2016 during the election season, and we came together and we had a shared passion for social justice. Turns out we both would end up at the University of Washington. I graduated in 2021 with my degree in journalism, and then Brad went on to earn his MPA there. He's a double dog. So we're just so grateful to have this opportunity. But throughout our career and navigating these institutions that we've been in, we noticed that we were often the only in the room. We grew up, in a predominantly white town in Olympia, Washington at Tomoter High School, and going through the UW brought its other hosts of challenges as well. So we decided that, we really wanted to uplift our community by highlighting all of the amazing Black professionals that we have connected with throughout our careers and learn about how they've gotten to where they have, and also to share those stories of inspiration and resilience and the strategies that they've used to overcome adversity. So it's been a journey. We started this in September, but as I said, it started many, many years ago. And one of our main core aspects of our podcast is we want to break down the barrier about what professionalism looks like, because as Black people in the workplace, we often are code switching. We're putting on another personality that really is not us. And so we haven't been able to show up authentically in the spaces that we have been in. And this podcast breaks that barrier for us. And we are able to really show up and foster authenticity through engaging conversations and talk about relevant social issues to our community, and also hopefully inspire young Black professionals. But I just wanted to also introduce Brad and allow him to share. As I said, we came together at the UW, also at Tomoter High School. But Brad, feel free to go ahead and share an introduction.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, everyone, for being here today. And thank you to the Young Professionals Network for having us and inviting us to be here today to interview Megan. We really appreciate it, and we're grateful for that. We started Identity Unboxed way back, probably 8 months ago. Doesn't seem like a long time, but it kind of feels like it. And really the premise of this project was to amplify Black voices. It was also to showcase and highlight the achievements and the journeys of outstanding Black individuals like Megan that's here with us today. And like Tiana said, that's just really the core of our mission, is making sure that we can show up authentically as ourselves in this space. And it's perfectly in line with DEI at a time when it's a hot topic, it's under scrutiny across the nation. And we really want to show that diversity, equity, and inclusion, it's more than just checking the box. It's more than just, posting a quote on social media. It's really about making sure that people can show up authentically as themselves, knowing that they belong where they're at, and about creating a cultural shift to where people don't have to feel like they have to conform in certain spaces in order to be accepted or in order to keep a job. And so that's why we're here today. And we're so grateful to have you here, Megan. Megan is currently the director of the Washington State Office of Equity. She's done great work in our community. She's committed her life to public service, lifelong. And so I know Tiana's going to share a little bit more about her, and we'll get into the questions.
Yeah, I echo everything Brad said. We're just so grateful to Megan for being here. She started the Office of Equity as the director this past August and formerly worked as the assistant director for Shared Power, leading multiple aspects of the agency's work, was the inaugural chair of the Washington State Blacks United in Leadership and Diversity Build, which is an employee resource group for Black professionals, the state, to encourage representation in our state government. She is committed to a lifelong journey of pursuing and living the values of equity and justice. Megan earned her master's degree in public administration from the Evergreen State College, and she's also certified as a Prosci Change Management Practitioner, a diversity professional, and a diversity executive. Megan also co-taught a master's program at the Evergreen State College, emphasizing democratic governance and social change for current and future public administrators. And she's passionate about social justice and ensuring fairness for everyone, especially the next generation. That includes her daughters, nieces, and nephews. We're so excited to hear more about your journey, Megan, and we are just so grateful that you're here. But I will allow Brad to ask our first question.
So our first question for you, Megan, could you take us back to when you first decided to pursue a career in public service and tell us about how your identity influenced this decision and throughout everything, how you've maintained to be steadfast in achieving your goals?
Yeah, that's so good evening. Hello, and thank you. I'm honored to be here with you all. And I just want to give it up for Tiana and Brad, to come out and say and see this need and then be the change and be the thing that should be celebrated. And that's really what change is going to require. It's going to require us to understand where those gaps are and then be courageous to step into that and fill that. So I just want to give it up for you too, if y'all. So often we feel like we don't have the power to do these things. And for me, I never saw myself in the position that I am right now. So I'm from Tacoma, Washington. I grew up there. I went to Stanley Elementary School on Hilltop, and then I graduated from Lincoln High School. Go A's. And, for me, growing up, we didn't have a lot of resources on assistance, things like that. And we always had a lot of love and a lot of games. It was a lot of fun, dance and good food. You know what that's like. My parents always told me you're going to go to college. So that's the only thing I knew. After high school, I was going to go to college. And for me, looking back on my life, it's a story of access. So I did everything that I could. We say we live in a meritocracy, right? And that if you work hard and you're not lazy, whatever that means, you should be able to be successful. But I'm living proof that that's not the case. That's not enough. So I had a 3.91 GPA in high school. I have played volleyball and basketball. I worked. I helped take care of my siblings. And I still would not have went to college because I didn't know how to complete the FAFSA. I didn't know how to complete college applications. I didn't know how to complete the college application tuition waiver. I didn't know you had to apply. You had to pay to apply to college, right? Writing the essay questions, all these little steps. And so a couple teachers really helped me navigate that process. And that's why I was able to go to college. Yes, I did a lot of work on my own, but access is so important. And so many kids in our communities don't have that. And so when I went to college, it opened up my world. I went to school in Massachusetts. There were a lot of people from different countries there. And that was my first really understanding that not all Black people are Black. So I met somebody from Trinidad, and I was like, hey, what's up? We're all Black. They're like, we're not Black, we're Trinidadian. And I said, okay, my bad. All right. So it was a lot of world lessons for me. And my mind just kept getting open and open and open. And I came out, and really why I got into public services, I wanted security. I needed to make sure that I could support myself, be there. I'm the oldest of four, so be there for my siblings if we needed. And, everyone said, and I had a friend who worked for the state. She said, oh, yeah, you should get a job here. Okay, what do I know, right? So that's why I applied and got a job there. So that's what started my journey in public service.
Thank you. I feel like that really speaks to the lived experience of so many Black folks and so many folks from other marginalized communities, having to work from the ground up. Like you said, we live in a meritocracy, but it's a lot harder for people with certain barriers, and being the oldest and probably feeling the burden of needing to take care of your family and take care of your siblings and be that example. And it's great to see that you are that example and you took it upon yourself to do the work and get to where you are. So thank you so much for sharing that.
We really appreciate you bringing up that point of access, because it is something that is very prevalent right now, especially during a time where DEI is under increased scrutiny, and often a lot of these efforts have been repealed. So I would love to ask you, as the Director of the Office of Equity for Washington State, At a time when there is a current climate of these efforts being repealed across the nation, how have you navigated adversity, particularly as Black women in leadership? And what would you emphasize about the importance of integrating DEI into the fabric of our institutions? And they have historically excluded our community.
That's a lot.
It's a lot.
Long question.
That's time. I know if you need to repeat too.
Yeah, so I guess I would start by saying that if you understand our history of oppression and racism in this country, that you already know what the deal is, right? So when we make advancements, there's always that pushback. And so you have to always be thinking, I played sports, right? So I'm always thinking offense and defense. And there's got to be a strategy. There's got to be intention. This thing, like, progress won't happen just because we want it or just because we scream for it or just because we, desire it, right? It's going to take intentional action. So what I would say is you got to have a plan. You got to have a plan if you get into this role, if you get into any role, really, because equity, what we tell folks in our office is we're responsible for we're coming up with the strategy, co-creating that strategy, the accountability, things like that. But equity is everyone's jobs. So no matter what job you get into, you should be thinking about it with a lens towards equity. And so I would say progress is always, this is not linear. It's always this back and forth pendulum. And so you really need to take the time to educate yourself on that if you want to be effective, which I hope you do, right? Because it's going to take all of us to get to the future that we all deserve and that we want. So that's what I would say about the need to, or the situation we're in right now. So it's a strategy. It's about what's going on, what maybe could some next things or barriers or challenges that come to fruition that we need to deal with. But then how are we also playing offense, right? What's going to be our strategy? So sometimes it feels like we're really passive. We're like, oh no, they're being mean to us. And it's like, yeah, but then get in the game, right? Like play to win. So then what are we going to do? How are we going to be bold? How are we going to take action? How are we going to make sure that it's not just we're on the defense and we're just hoping one day they stop, but that now they got to be thinking about our advances, our strategy. What are we going to come up with next, right? And because ultimately, I believe most people want the same things we do. So if we show up and we're being bold and we're being courageous, folks will say, yeah, know what they're doing. That's what we want. And it gets easier because it's not just our burden to carry. What I would say about working as a Black woman is, you see what's going on nationally. It's hard, right? People question my qualifications. They question if it's the right time for me. They question if my intents are pure. They question if I want equity for all. There's all these different narratives that are around, and that's what's going on nationally for Black women. And I just say that we have to protect our Black women. And when I mean Black women, I mean Black women and Black trans women. We're often the ones who are doing such hard work. We're the ones bearing the brunt and the labor for so much work, and the ones that people continually beat up on or make invisible. And so that's what I would say. It's the same struggle that's going nationally as the struggle that I have. And the good thing is that I'm not doing this for myself. I'm doing this for, as you read in my bio, I'm doing this for the next generation. I'm doing this for people who didn't have the same access as me. So I'm not going to stop until I no longer have breath in my body.
Thank you so much. I really appreciated the point about you sharing your experiencing discrimination at this level of your career. Would you be willing to share how you navigate that and practice mindfulness throughout that? If you'd be willing.
I'm sure it's hard.
I did say I'm from Tacoma, right? I don't know about the mindfulness up in there, but I'm very, very lucky and blessed to have strong support. So when I need to vent, I have a safe space that I can do that, where I don't have to worry about the words that I say, or if I say this, was somebody going to take it as I'm angry and mad at everybody? I'm the mad Black woman, here she come again, right? I get to be myself and be vulnerable and cry and scream and yell and whatever else I need to do in those spaces. And then I also have the opportunity I love being outside, and I live in Olympia. and they have beautiful trails in Olympia. I don't think I could have lived there when I was younger because there's not a lot to do there, for younger people. But, now it's a good place for me. So so I go on the trails. I love being outside. It just, I just stop and listen to the birds, listen to the animals, listen to the rustling wind in the trees. And that makes me realize, or that just gives me peace. It's calming. I like to travel when I can. And in the evenings, I love just spending time with my kids because kids they don't really care who you are. I think I remember some of the celebrities, they'd be like, hey, that's mommy and daddy. Like, who cares? Or I think it was The Rock. He was trying to sing Maui's song. And his daughter was like, Dad, you're ruining the song. Be quiet. So kids, they'll keep you humble, but they always have this just pure joy. And it just makes you, it just fills your heart. So I really feel lucky about that as well. So those are some things that I do. I try to be active, and that's a good way to process and give myself that time. And then just making sure that I turn off. Sometimes I just don't even be on my phone. So, people know me. You text me, that means it's not an emergency. I'll get back to you when I need to, or when I can. Then if you call me, then it's an emergency. So maybe if you call me twice, that's probably what it is.
Then you'll not.
Then I'll answer. Yeah.
Thank you for that. I feel like you really touched on the importance of doing things outside of work and being able to shut that off, because I feel like a part of, our culture, there's so much grind, and I have to do this and I have to do that and I have to be here and I have to do this. And it's really hard to turn off and take that time to go for a walk and just be in nature, or just soak in that time with your kids, because you're in the back of your mind. It's like, oh, I got this email, I got that email, I got this meeting, I got that meeting. And so thank you for touching on that. I wanted to...
I would say with that is, so I've been a state employee for 16 years. So I have, lived experience, but I also have the experience with the state. And one of the things that I learned in my time is like, the work is always there. It'll be there tomorrow. And I take that with me in the state, in the Office of Equity. And the amazing thing is we have an amazing team in our office. We have about 33 people in our office right now. And if you think about the people who tend to get into equity work, it's people who are passionate about change and making a difference. When you are living in your passion, you want to do it all the time. The problem with that is then you can get burned out, right? And we can't do that to ourselves because we need this in this long game. It's a marathon, right? And so we have to make sure that we are intentional in the office about taking time. And I have to be the most intentional because I have to model it. There's nothing worse than coming to a job and your boss says, oh yeah, you don't have to work 40 hours, but they're always the first one there and the last one there. And so people are like, oh, but do they really mean it? Like, I really kind of want to get a promotion because the wages ain't there right now in the job I'm in. And I guess I got to say too. And my boss has actually modeled that for me. So for those of you who don't know, we're the office of the governor. That's where we're situated. And there above me, there's the deputy chief of staff, the chief of staff, and then the governor. And when I first started, I was still like, oh my gosh, no, we can't ever take breaks, things like that. Well, the chief of staff, maybe 3 months after I began as the interim, so I was the interim director in May and the permanent director in August, took 3 weeks off. And I said, 3 weeks? What? And then the deputy director took a whole month off, a whole month. So I said, well, dang, I should be able to do something now. So, I mean, really, that's the impact of as a supervisor. So if you're leading teams, that's the impact is once you model it, you confirm to people that it's okay to care for themselves. So I just wanted to share that too.
No, that's amazing. And I think that's a thing that we run into so often. I know Tiana has said, like, fighting for justice, it's like in our DNA. It's something that we've always done. It's something our ancestors, those that came before us, had to do. And so doing that work, we talk about empathy fatigue. It's like there are so many social issues. There are so many things going on, a lot of civil unrest. And then sometimes you do it as your job as well. And there's, work within the job and then activism and stuff outside of work. And it's like, man, like, when is it going to stop? Like, when can I get a break? And people do feel burnout. And so it's good that you mentioned modeling that, because in these hierarchical structures, it's so easy to look to the leaders and think, oh, if I'm not working as hard as them, I'm not going to be able to keep my job. And then you put this internal pressure on you. And so you bring up a great point about being the example and being the model for how to set the tone for the place of work.
Said this was informal, right? Because you made me think of something. So
yeah.
Tiana was like,
we don't have the script.
Okay, she said, we might be informal if you made me think something. I said, does it work this way too?
Yeah, no, this is Love it.
Good. Okay.
Ask us questions if you want to.
Oh.
We'll change the format.
Oh, I love that. I need a little piece of paper too. When you were talking about being fatigued by all the issues, that's why I think our office is so important. So we are established in statute. 43.06D is the Office of Equity statute. So RCW 43.06D, you can Google it. We are here to facilitate policy and systems change. And part of why I think we're so exhausted is because, we have to care about the things that we care about, which is mostly related to people we know or who we are, right? And there's always something going on with a lot of different things, so we only care about that thing. But I think if we focus on the system, the root cause, then we will change the system for everybody versus having to divide all our efforts to each little thing that's popping up. And so I think if we can see the big picture in the long game, we can empathize for things that are happening, but don't lose sight of the root cause, because it's the root cause that is the creation of all the other issues that are going on. And so I think that sometimes we have to, it's like, I feel like being in a rat race, or on a hamster wheel, we're just spinning, working really hard, but we're not being effective. And so we have to take a step back. In school, I'm sure in college, y'all learned about like evaluating, critical thinking, stepping back and thinking about, if you're trying to solve the problem, what is the problem? You first have to identify the problem. And we have not done that well enough so we can actually attack it at its root. And then we can bring our efforts together and attack it that way. And so I think that is probably going to be the way that we can make the change. So for us, we are asked, can you help out here, 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 here? And I just tell folks, look, we're at root cause right now. There's only 33 of us in the office, right? We can't do it all. And we have to prioritize so that we can do well-being. So we prioritize by what is the root cause of these things, because they're really similar. The root cause is similar. And so I just want to offer that as a piece when we're thinking about how can we make real changes. Always do your 5 whys or whatever else the new model is out there for getting to root cause, and look at it that way.
Awesome. Thank you so much. I wanted to ask a question branching off of that. I know just working in the public sector and in this kind of work in general, it could be very hard when you want to strive to make that change. But let's be real, there are forces that are, above us that, benefit from poverty and benefit from people, and all these social issues that we talk about. Because at the end of the day, they're bringing in the money. And when you're in the positions that we're in, it could be hard to navigate that when we don't necessarily, there's power in numbers, but we don't necessarily have all the resources to bring about that change. And sometimes people in workplaces, they'll start to speak up about wanting to change, and then you see retaliation, you see things happen, and it just knocks people back down to square one. And so I wanted to know, could you give any advice to folks in general who are, even if they're not, in a DEI or equity role, who want to see change within their own departments, just how to navigate it? Because there's often pushback, people say, oh, like, you're working within the system, like, are you really about change? And there are people that might say, oh, Megan's working for the state, is she really about it? So when you are, because you're doing what you can do, and look where you're at. So what is your advice to those who are like working within these institutions to just make that progress? Because it's not going to change overnight. You can't reform all these systems overnight. And I think people get mistaken when they don't see the change coming fast enough. They don't see how hard you're actually working while dealing with others, just factors in our country in general that make it difficult to make change.
Yeah. So the first thing is the systems, the processes, is people. So we are our barriers, and so I think we have to understand that, look inside ourselves, do a self-reflection, think with humility. Am I part of the problem? And if you are, then work to change that, right? So that's a part of it. The other thing is, for me, it is hard. It is hard. But I know who I am and I know what I'm doing. I don't need validation from people who are saying, oh, she ain't doing this, she ain't doing that, because you ain't here. That's what Brene Brown said, right? The person in the arena, right? I'm not going to deal with people who aren't trying to do this work, but who are on the sidelines yelling and screaming about what you should or shouldn't be doing. You don't know. You're not here. And I have a very clear plan. I do listen to people. I hope my team members say that I listen sometimes. And so we are about strategy we can adjust when we see that things aren't working, but we're about intentionality because for me, I don't want this fluff, superficial change. I don't want it because it looks cute, right? We talk about, well, I like equity is more than potlucks. This is about, this is not book clubs. This is not those things, right? This is real change. And it's the ugly work. It's not pretty. It's not flash. It's not nothing like that. But it's so important to me because we are in such a critical time in our country, in our world, facing such critical issues, housing, climate, environmental, poverty, right? We don't pay people living wages. And if we don't deal with those root issues, I don't know if there will be generations on generations on generations. Like, that's the reality. And so I don't really have time to respond to people who would say, I don't really know Megan. I know Megan, and I got enough people who know me anyway. And anytime when anybody hears me talk, then they know who I am. Real to recognize real, right? So that's what I would say to that. And then I think you asked a third question, but I forgot it already.
I done forgot it too. That was an impromptu question.
Yeah, you did a great job answering that.
Dang it, I'll not pass the interview right there. I was A, B, and C.
You did amazing. We forgot that there was another question to that, because your answer was so good. But I wanted to ask you about, you mentioned how it can be difficult to keep like the long-term goal in mind. And I know with a lot of people, like Brad had said, like the empathy fatigue, like often BIPOC are disproportionately shouldering this DEI work on top of our full-time jobs because, a lot of other people think that they're too busy to engage in DEI sometimes in these institutions. So I was hoping if you'd be able to share strategies on how you effectively collaborate in a bureaucratic type of institution with the state. I know it can be difficult when there's so much work going on in other areas, but like, how do you coordinate that? And what advice would you give to young professionals that are looking to get into DEI work? Or just generally like effective collaboration in that type of environment?
Yeah. It was a systems. It takes a long time.
There we go.
Yeah, you put this background. Yeah, it was a system. So it does take time. I think our approach is both in. So I wouldn't say disregard the things that are happening right now. I think what we can do is try to connect people as best we can within the system that it is right now. So I worked with the Poverty Reduction Work Group in Department of Social and Health Services, DSHS. And the approach there was to maximize the system we have while we build what we need. And we have to lay a strong foundation to do it. And so we have to do the both and of the work. And so right now we are trying to connect people to the access, right? Give them access to the services, to the opportunities, to the resources that are right now while we build a system that is barrier-free and accessible for everyone. And so that's what I say our approach is. And we do the best we can with the resources that we currently have. What I would say to folks who are looking to get into this work is the most important thing I say is you got to have a plan. I think we get into these roles, and after George Floyd's murder, everyone's like, everybody got to have a DI person. Everybody, DEI. You want to do DEI? Do DEI, right? And we didn't know what we were doing. I think we meant well. We really were like, no, we got to help. This isn't right. So go ahead and hire the person. And the people getting into these roles didn't really know what the change needed to be or what it looked like, because you have to really understand the system. You have to understand the system so that you can make the changes. And I know we want to say, like, get rid of it all right now, but there are people who are relying on it right now who couldn't keep surviving if everything went away right now. So it really is a both-end approach, but you have to, I think that's one of the things that I bring is I've worked in the state for 16 years. I started in an entry-level position and worked my way up. And so I was able to see from different vantage points, breakdowns in our systems, places where we worked really well and where it was efficient, right? And so then I could say, oh, you got to think in a system. You got to think about what's the system. And so as I was thinking about that, then I could say, okay, well, if I could do this here, that here. And then also the collaboration you talk about is crucial. None of us can do anything on their own. That's why I talk about, my own journey is I had help along the way. And in my life, I kept getting, connecting with people who gave me access to different opportunities. And I think that co-creation is the only way we're going to figure out. So people look at me like, Maggie, you got the answers. I don't know the answers. I really don't. I want people to understand that. And you know what? When I say that, just this pressure lifts off me because I don't have to do it on my own. I just have to make sure I create the space, that the space is there where we can do it together. I think that's the only way we're going to figure out what needs to happen. The solution is by doing it together, because I have my own gaps. I have my own biases, right? And so we can complement each other. You can spot my gaps, right? And then you probably have more knowledge about the technology because I done gave up. So some of it, I do some, but I'm like, what? So like there's things that we can learn from each other and build off together to create the beautiful thing in the future. Plus, even though, we're all people of color up in here, our life experiences, Black, our life experiences are different. The Black community is not a monolith. No community is a monolith. So if they're like, oh, good, we got the one Black person here, tell us everything about the Black community, you're already set for failure. So we really need each other to do this together. And that is the power of collaboration in the state. That's new. So we don't typically work together. And I would say across sectors, we don't do really good at working together. Nonprofit, private, local governments, we tend to be really focused on making changes. And we're like, yeah, we're going to make all these changes. But we're all part of a system. And so we need to work together to pull our resources, pull our energy to really see the solutions go further and quicker. We could move quicker if we did it together.
Absolutely. I really do agree with that, because even working in the nonprofit sector, you see, you could have a million, organizations working on a single issue, but if they're not working together and having a coordinated response, it's kind of what you said in your answer to the previous question, like running on a hamster wheel. It's like a bunch of Band-Aid solutions, like we're going to help here, we're going to help there, but you're not getting to the root of the problem. And that's really great that like no one knows it all. Like Megan doesn't come in here and know it all. No, the CEO might not know it all, but it's that power in, being a collective and coming together and brainstorming ideas and really hearing from one another. That's important. And I feel like that really segues good into our next question. So for folks that, just hear DEI, Office of Equity, like, oh, what is that? Can you explain the functions of the Office of Equity and how your office has made tangible impacts in the community? It's statewide.
Yeah, so our statute I mentioned is RCW 43.06D, and I think RCW stands for Revised Code of Washington. So the acronyms there. And in there it says that we are supposed to facilitate policy and systems change to reduce disparities and improve outcomes for everybody in Washington state. So what we're really trying to advance is a Washington for all. That's all that fancy words mean. Washington for all. For all. And that means anybody who's in Washington, we mean you too. I would say that it's too early for impacts. So our office was established in 2020, but at that time it was the beginning of COVID. And so we didn't have any staff, any resources. We were established without a budget. We didn't have our first director. Dr. J wasn't hired until March of 2021, so a full year later. And at that time, the office had 3 staff, including Dr. J. I started in April of 2022, and there was a total of 5 of us. So what I would say is that, and so then when I became the interim director in May of 2023, we had 12 people, and today we have 33. So what I did last year was focus on hiring, because it's exhausting, right? Our mission is huge. There's so much need. There's so many people who are hurting. There's so many people who are being harmed every day by our systems. And so you want to do it all, but you can't do it with only a couple of people, right? And so I focused on hiring. Everybody in our office was hiring. Everybody's probably like, I never want to see another position description in my life.
I have seen a lot of job postings lately.
Oh,
everyone, if you're job hunting,
be watching you on LinkedIn.
You're hiring.
Oh yeah, oh yeah. And we had so much support. I would say the one thing that I feel really grateful is that we don't have a problem with desire for the most part in Washington State. People want to do right in Washington State government. So when we were like, we need help, they're like, we're here. We'll help you. What do you need? What do you need? And we just got it. And so that's the reason why we're able to do so much hiring so quickly in such a short period of time. But what I would say now is we're laying that foundation. So in our statute, we're supposed to provide consultation and resources and support to state agencies. Now we have a team of, I think 9. So 5 pro-equity consultants and 4 shared power consultants. And they work with state agencies to help them learn how to build relationships with people in community and each other, and really co-create together. And so that's what we're doing. And I knew that's 9 people for like a lot of state agencies. And so we have to do it in a targeted way, in a way that we can facilitate moving the system without necessarily being able to dive down like a consultant really would. So we're building our framework out for being able to provide those resources. We're contacting agencies about our pro-equity, anti-racism work, pair work, to provide them support on building their own care teams that involve community individuals or organizations. We're also building out our accountability framework, which is in our statute. We're supposed to create dashboards that talk about the outcomes of our state systems and make that transparent so that people can understand how our state is performing. And some of it requires that truth and reconciliation. We just need to own that we're messing up, right? It doesn't matter. Like, for me to say that we have fell short of our goal doesn't mean that I'm a horrible person. It just means I didn't get it right. And that's the reality. That's what people need to hear, is that our state government isn't meeting the needs of people today. And then that can free us too, right? Having to shoulder this thing that everybody knows, the elephant in the room, emperor's new clothes. Nobody wants to say it, but everybody knows that we're missing the mark, because then we can work together to fix it. And then community be more willing to come in and help us if we're honest about it first, right? So we're building out our dashboards, all of our data metrics. We're using I think we have 15 determinants of equity now around housing, economic justice, environmental justice, digital equity, things like that. We're putting them on our website. But I'm also really, really proud of our communication strategy. So often there are some really good things happening in government, but nobody knows about it. So, like, does it matter if nobody can access the things that are happening, right? So for me, knowing that a lot of our system boils down to access, it's how do we make sure that we have a really strong communications and engagement strategy? How will we make sure people know in plain talk too? Because I mean, I've gotten our state forums sometimes and I'm like, I don't even know what this means. And I have a master's degree and I don't know what it means. So we have to make sure we're in there, right? We have to make sure we're communicating in a way that people understand, because language is a barrier, right? Not only in English, we have to communicate in all the beautiful languages in Washington State. So for me, I'm really excited because we're launching our amazing communication strategy on social media, different ways of that. Thankfully, it's not me doing it, because otherwise y'all get really bored with what I want to post, because I don't know what to say. Hello? I don't know. But also, we can't rely on that, right? Because not everybody has access to the internet or the resources to access the internet. So we're going to rely on the traditional forms of communication, newspaper ads, interviews like this, right, to spread the word, advertisements. I don't know, you might see a commercial from us one day or something, I don't know. But, we have to use the old and the new to make sure everyone knows about us, and that we can connect to other things happening in the government, because we want to be able to be the facilitator or the conduit of information so that people can get more access. Grant opportunities, right? Especially small businesses, Black and brown-owned businesses, women, veteran-owned businesses, they don't know about these opportunities. So being able to connect them with grant opportunities, contract opportunities, procurements, could be a way that we can begin to invest in Washington in the short term until we can produce the long-term barrier-free systems.
Wow, thank you so much for sharing so much detail about the current initiatives. I actually wanted to switch gears a little bit, because you had mentioned that you were focusing on hiring a diverse workforce, and you have been with the state government for 16 years. Can you talk about how you ascended the corporate or state, government ladder, navigating such a large institution, and particularly the role of mentorship and sponsorship in your career? Because I know as Black women and BIPOC in the workplace, it's really hard to find a mentor that's reflective of your lived experience, which is why we created this space to be able to speak to people like you. So would you be willing to share the importance of mentorship to you, and particularly any moment where someone encouraged you to continue to push through?
The whole time. I mean, starting from, I think someone outside of my family, maybe from my high school, when I gave that example of being able to get into college. But other than that, I've always, I'm an extrovert. So I just go out and we'll just be best friends already. Everybody will be like, hey, how are y'all? We'll be great, right? But the benefit, I guess the privilege I have is that I can make connections with a lot of different people and through that find mentors. It's absolutely critical. But I think the most important thing I would say is if you feel like you're not equipped or not skilled to do this thing you want to do, know that that's normal. That's okay. Well, it's not necessarily okay, but it's normal, especially for folks who have been oppressed and systematically excluded in our state and in our country, that we have feelings of inadequacy. The work cultures aren't set up to facilitate our success. And I struggle with that myself as well. So I just want part of me being able to be vulnerable and talk about my experiences is because I want other people to know that it's not you. It's not you. And to be able to find those spaces of support for yourself and not to give up and to know to go for that promotion, just to go for the promotion. And there's some things that we're working to do in state government to change our processes to make it easier, making it the interview where you're not just relying on paper, because for Black community, we're verbal. We'd like to talk. So asking us to put stuff on paper, you're already disadvantaging us. And so we're working to identify those things that are barriers that we may not even think are barriers and remove those things to make it more accessible for folks in different communities to be a part of. Because working for the state is a great opportunity, stable work, and lots of opportunities. There's so many different jobs in the state. That's why, you could be here and work for 40 years. I mean, you may not. You may like your job, your one job, and do that for 40 years. People have done that, and there's nothing wrong with that either. So that's the first thing I want to say. But mentorship is so important. No one gets anywhere. I don't care what anybody said. There's no such thing as a self-made millionaire, billionaire. I don't think we should have those, but there's no such thing. Nobody gets anywhere, and it doesn't mean that you didn't work hard. Saying that I had help does not mean that I didn't work hard. I don't know why they can't both exist. But the reality is nobody gets anywhere on their own. And we need to dispel that myth because it makes it feel like if I had to get help, then I'm insufficient. So that's you can tell I feel strongly about that, right? So I would say that mentors are important. And I think also knowing that you have things to bring as well, you can teach your mentors. It's okay to learn from other people. It's okay to reach out and ask folks who are in the space to say, hey, can I talk to you about this for a second? Can you just work with me? I know that there's like this idea in the Black community where we keep each other down, but I'll tell you, working in the state, I've never come across another Black person who was like that. And we are really trying to help each other. And most communities have networks where they're supporting each other. And with our business resource groups, you mentioned Build, those are communities for that group of person, and there's 7 of them in the state. So we've got Build for the Black community, WIN for the immigrant community, the Washington Immigrant Network. Oh my gosh, I'm going to forget when I know it. RAIN, which is the LGBTQ community, the Rainbow Alliance Network. DIN, the Disability Inclusion Network, LLN, the Latino Leadership Network, BERG, the Veterans Work Group, and HAPPEN, which is the Hawaiian Asian Pacific Islander Network. I think that's all of them. There's 7, so if I'm missing one, then you just know I missed one. But that's a space where you can be yourself at work. That's the first time I really felt like I could be myself and just like, I don't have to try to think about what I'm going to say, or if I'm too loud, or, I use my slang or anything like that. And those spaces are so important. It's so important in the work environment. And so that space where you can get mentorship because there's people of different titles in those spaces, and you get mentoring that way. We're trying to do better with mentorship. I actually just signed up to be a mentor through our statewide mentorship program. And so I have a mentee that's somebody in the state. But I would say that if you find a connection, and sometimes your mentor doesn't necessarily have to be of the same ethnicity, race, or group, right? I've had mentors that are different races, and it helped. There were things that they did that helped. I just knew that there were certain things they couldn't help me with. That's okay, because I took what they could give me, right? So for me, I'm like a sponge. I know that I don't know everything, and I just try to listen. I like talking to older people because they love to tell stories, sometimes the same story over and over, and I'll listen to it because you might get something different the second or third or fourth time, right? I just love taking it all in, and I just never realize when I'm going to use that information again. So I would say you can have different mentors for different types of things, but any person you get wisdom from, you never know where that's going to serve you.
Awesome. Thank you so much for that. And building off of that, I wanted to ask you a question, not on the script. A lot of people just with the climate today, when they hear, just the DEIB, they instantly go to race. Can you touch on the intersectionality just within identity and how DEI goes beyond race?
Yeah. So when you talk about root cause, we have to think about the root cause of our system. And our office centers race as the root cause of oppression in our country, right? I think there's enough data, enough information that it shouldn't be debatable. I know it is, but it shouldn't be. And like I told you, the Black community is not a monolith. No community is a monolith. We have everyone of all identities in those groups. Intersectionality from Crenshaw is this idea that your intersections of identities of oppression, right, compound to increase the impact of your oppression, your experience of oppression, right? That's why I talk about Black trans women, right? You can talk about folks with intersections with disabilities. I just think that what we should really do is our identities matter because they give us some similarities in experience, right? So we can maybe talk about the types of foods, our cultures, right? Our cultural experiences. And for right now, that those matter because you are treated how people identify you, right? And where you live, your geography matters too. So our goal is to change the system root cause because we want a Washington for all. Focusing on race does not mean that all white people are bad, right? Because white people are impacted by racism too. If you've read Heather McGhee's book, The Sum of Us, or even listen to her TED Talk, she'll talk about they had public pools before. Like our public services used to be really good. We used to do a lot of things and give things to people for free. You could go swimming in public pools. And then when this was during segregation, Jim Crow legalized segregation in the United States. So I know we talk about slavery, but that wasn't the end of oppression for Black Americans. Jim Crow existed through the 50s, and we could still say we're a segregated society today through practice, right? And when 1954, Brown v. Board, Supreme Court said separate but equal is not constitutional, people started filling those big, beautiful public pools. And in addition to Black people being impacted, poor white people were impacted too because they couldn't afford to go to the private clubs where they have those beautiful pools anymore, right? So racism impacts us all. The decisions we make, if whether to expand. Recently, I just read the book Dying of Whiteness. It's really good, and it talks about the Medicaid, right? ACA, what we call Obamacare, and how there are still states who will not extend it into their states. And so people are dying or can't afford or being bankrupt by medical expenses that could be covered if they had expanded Medicaid in their states. These are, and I would say most of us are poor because there's very few people who are winning in our society right now. So we could all say that we're all poor here. I don't know your stories. Maybe we got somebody in here that's like really, but for the most part, we're talking about I think they say 10 people, right? I mean, we're really talking about a very, very small amount of people who are really not impacted by the things day to day. So that's why we focus on race, because that will help us uplift everybody. And also we can't only focus on race because that's not going to solve the issues of access for folks in the disability community. That won't necessarily solve language access issues for folks who speak different languages. That's not necessarily going to solve the issues faced by the LGBTQ community. But by working on those intersections and all those identities, we can fix the systems for everybody. If we're all also working together, that's one thing I would say is we can't only focus on things when it comes to our community only. We cannot do that. We have to always work together for all the issues at a systems approach, at a root cause systems approach. So I would say I would not shy away from saying that we have to focus on race, but I would also say that it's a both and. It really is a both and. And this idea that everything's binary, it's yes or no, it's right or wrong. mean, that's why we're in the situation is right now. We have to stop that. Things are more nuanced, things are more complex. And the more we have the conversations, we can understand the complexities that exist and develop the comprehensive solutions to really make the change. But we have to allow the opportunity for more of those conversations versus getting outraged at the first little thing that maybe somebody says that we don't agree with. Knowing that through that learning can facilitate our own growth sometimes so that we can move forward together.
Wow, thank you so much for touching on how we need to transform our systems, and also that people are marginalized based on the different identities that they do have, and also those compound. And I was hoping if you'd be willing to share if there's one point you could emphasize on what DIB is to people that do not understand the importance of it and that it should be prioritized in our work. I anticipate I know what your answer will be, but what would that point be?
I was going to say, because we were talking about it on the way in the car, when you see, huge public figures putting things online like DEI must die and things like that. Can you elaborate just on what Tiana said, and also, just how it's under increased attack and scrutiny?
Yeah. So one of the things we've been talking about what's in our office is what's a message that will resonate with people that you don't have to take a training or read a dissertation to understand. Because the example you just gave is true. There are people who want to keep status quo. There are people that want to keep us fighting each other versus working together for the change we all deserve. So we've been thinking about this idea of messaging. How do we really do so? DIB, diversity, equity, inclusion, belonging. Most folks don't know what that means. And what happens is when we use terminology that people don't understand, is it can be co-opted easily, right? Because maybe somebody has a more effective way to describe it in a shorter, succinct way, or in a plain language type way, right? And so I'm really grappling with how do we express what it is that we want, the vision that we want, in a way that when I say it, you know what it is. So for me, what I would say today, DIB for the Office of Equity is Washington for all. That's it, because it encompasses all of those principles. Washington for all is diversity, right? Washington is growing in its diversity. That's the reason why our office was established. We're more diverse now. We're going to continue to grow and be a more diverse state. Equity. For Washington for all, that means I have to be able to give you and you what it is you need. Well, using the principles of John A. Powell and the Belonging and Othering Institute of targeted universalism, what you need and what I need are different. What every person in this audience or watching this on YouTube or wherever we're going to be, what every person needs is different. So in order to achieve a Washington for all, we have to target the solutions for people's individual needs. We talked about intersectionality. That means the wholeness of your person. You are a whole being more than your identities, although your identities impact how you're treated in our state, in our country. So, and inclusion. Well, we're going to be included, but we're also going to co-create. We're going to move past inclusion to co-creation because it's going to be our party. I like, so John A. Powell attended our convening a couple of years ago, and he said, inclusion is, I'm going to invite you to my party. I get to choose the food. And he said he's a vegetarian, and I was like, oh, I don't know if I'm going to be able to eat at that party. He said he would choose the music, which would be Motown. Okay, I could still get with that, right? He gets to choose all the things, but you're invited. That's inclusion. He said belonging, which gets to your last B is the belonging, is where we get to create it together. We get to create the playlist. We get to create the food. So in his party, then we would have some meat there. We get to have the games and invite the party list. Who's going to be invited, right? We also have responsibility then. With belonging means we all are responsible to each other and to the space that we're in, right? This ecosystem that we're in together. And so Washington for all means that. That means all of us are here together. We all have to help create this. And we all deserve to get to have access to the resources, true access to the resources that we need, the opportunities, the power we need to have autonomy, choice over how we live our lives. Agency is another way to phrase that, but I say choice because it's a plain word. It's a plain. And so that's really what we're going to be moving towards using is that phrase of Washington for all to help folks understand what equity means. Because I don't know, maybe people can co-opt it or something, but when I say Washington for all, we know what those terms are. The Washington state for three-letter word, all three-letter words, right? But that's what I mean when I think about DIB at this point.
Thank you so much. And
was that what you were going to say? Is that what you're going to?
Yeah, no, that was exactly what I was thinking, was like bringing people in, because DIB, it actually helps everyone. And I think that's what people have missed. There's a gap there where they think, but when you're focusing on these groups that have been marginalized, that you're removing access for other people that have been in power for centuries. So, they have a hard time, I think, like decentering themselves when the system has always prioritized them, and focusing on those other groups that haven't had access is actually benefiting everyone, because you're increasing, your diverse workforce and having more collaborative teams with different identities. So,
well, they've been told that we're going to replace them, that we're going to just change the system and have a new hierarchy. But I think what we see is a more flattened ecosystem where no one's above or valued more than someone else, and that we're going to listen to everyone. So we're really blessed. We are a virtual remote office for the most part. And so we get to hire all across Washington State. So we have people who work for the office who live along the I-5 corridor out towards the coast, Eastern Washington, and Central. The only one we're really missing right now is still the Tri-Cities. So we're working on that. What that allows us to say is, look, no, we got folks in your community too. It's not what people think of the state. They think, oh, you're the state of Olympia, because that's our capital. And because we've been in person, really, if you want to work in headquarters or something like that, you have to live close to Olympia, right? And who lives in Olympia?
Not a lot. Not us anymore.
I didn't have to laugh like that, though. Y'all didn't have to laugh like that, right? I mean, it's pretty homogenous still, right? And so us being able to hire all across Washington, we can say, no, we don't have, a whole bunch. There's only 40 people in the office, or 32 right now in the office, right? So, but we do have some representation, and we're going to work on engaging with you all. We're going to come out and be out there. Like I'm out here today, right? I want to get connected with the folks in the Eastern Washington and in Central Washington. Understand, what are your issues? How have you been left behind? Too, right? Because it's not oh no, we can't deal with y'all. No, because they're hurting too. In Eastern Washington and Central, they've had a lot of resources taken out of their other areas where they have to drive a long way to get to a hospital. Don't think they have to get airlifted to Harborview, right? These are real issues in these communities. And sometimes, and this is what I tell our state colleagues, is the way that we devise our processes, it creates the scenario that there's only a limited resource and that people have to fight for them. If we develop processes and we run more efficiently because we're collaborating across sectors and things like that, there's enough resources in Washington for everybody. So we have to create that environment. So folks are like, oh, so-and-so needs that. Yeah, I got them because I know I'm getting mine too. But if they feel like I'm in survival mode, people are worrying about which bills they can and can't pay right now. You're in survival mode. I'm not trying to think about so-and-so getting theirs because I need mine today. I got to look at my babies in the eyes and figure out how am I going to keep them fed. That's a critical space to be in. This is serious stuff for people, right? They don't care what so-and-so needs over there. So that's why it's so important for us in the state to understand that we have to work differently so that we can help folks see that there is enough for us all, so that then people can really say, I am going to give to you because I know we're both going to win.
Thank you so much for that, Megan. That was a beautiful answer, for real. I wanted to pass it on to you. I know we're kind of running down on time, but there's a very special question that we ask all of our guests, and everyone, like you said, the Black community is not a monolith. So would you want to take it away?
Yeah, happy to.
I plan on watching one of the sessions too, and I'm like, oh, I shouldn't, because then I would have known the question.
That's okay. Yeah, we love a surprise. I didn't even realize how fast the time was going. So this is amazing. But so we really want to emphasize the importance of the diversity within the Black community. And as you said, we are not a monolith and we are polylythic. There are so many different ways to be Black. And we ask each one of our guests to define what Blackness means to you, how it's influenced your professional life, and how you've navigated the world. So our last question is, what does Blackness mean to you? And it's a big one.
You did. What's the bonus? I feel like you might have put that question on there. I think you might have. So there's two parts. Blackness is how we're identified, right? So there is how you identify and how you're treated. We're identified by the color of our skin. So at the simplest answer, that's Blackness for me. In America, we're identified and we're grouped together no matter what, right? No matter how we identify ourselves. But man, we are so cool. Oh my gosh. That's the only way I can say is we're so cool. I just think of the ingenuity, the innovation, the swag, everything we touch, right? We got music that is then people can gravitate towards and then want to emulate, imitate, and spin off of, right? We think hip hop and how that's global, right? So, Black people, we make a way out of no way. We are resilient. Since we've come to America, we've had to be, right? I know like the tribal government as well, right? Tribal folks, Native folks, they're resilient. It had to be, right? So have we. And I really love it because when you have grown up in the culture, right? So I wouldn't say that people who grew up out of the culture are not Black. Like, I don't draw the lines like that. I think because we're all treated as Black, it don't matter what we want to say inside. And some stuff we just keep inside, like we just can't say out in public anyway in our community. So I wouldn't say that stuff outside anyway. But what I would say is that when we get together with people who are raised in our culture, we can just have the best time, right? And it's just like a look. I'll look at you, nod like that, and we're just looking, and that recognition. And that's those past 2 generations, right? I just started doing it. Nobody told me to do that. I just do it, right? So, and then laughing and the jokes, the clowning, the dancing, the food. Oh my goodness, the food. I just think we're really cool. That's the only thing I can say.
I love that. I love it.
Easy. Give it up for that answer.
I wouldn't say not to say anybody else isn't. I just want to say that, okay? I know the binary, Megan says everybody, Black people are cool. That means everybody's not. I'm not saying that. I just want to.
Yeah, I just wanted to ask if there's anything else that you wanted to share that we did not cover before we officially wrap up.
Well, I guess now I take my turn to ask you a question.
Oh.
Okay. What do you hope this platform and this space brings to other youth?
Wow, thank you. That is an amazing question. This was a passion project that Brad and I built from our lived experience of not having people in our lives that reflected our identities and, didn't have much of a community or representation. So for us, it's about showing youth that it's possible, that they are able to envision themselves in these positions like you as a director, as a CEO, in spaces that we have not been invited to before. So we just want to be able to show them the way and also demonstrate the power of community, because we do believe that we are stronger together, which is also one of the reasons Brad and I came together, because we could have done this on our own, and we thought that for us coming together and just showing that through our collaboration and our shared passion to uplift our community, that we'd be more effective that way. So that's how I would describe it.
Yeah, I would echo everything you said, and also really just uplifting youth coming from backgrounds like ours where, we had to put in a lot of work, and like yourself, doing a lot of things on your own, the hyper independence, being in these spaces. And like you said, people feel like they got to know it all. You suffer with the imposter syndrome and just a lot of the experiences that everyone has. And, sticking to, our community, knowing that a lot of Black youth don't have older people that they can look up to, that they can say, oh, they did it, so I can do it too. Or this is how this person got there, so this is how I need to do it. A lot of us are just getting by and taking it a day at a time, really with no guidance. And, through the grace of God, we get there somehow. A lot of us do, but a lot of youth get left behind and trapped in these systems really because they don't have a role model or someone that they can look up to. And so that was a big part of this project, was really wanting to bridge the gap between the, older generations and the younger generations, to come together and hear from folks that have been through everything that you've been through, that have worked for the state for 16 years. And now you're here, you're the director of the Office of Equity. How did Megan get there? And how can we follow in Megan's footsteps so that maybe one day I can be the director of the Office of Equity? And so that's really where it comes down for me.
That's beautiful. What I would say, what made me think about is one thing that I wanted to say is, it's okay if you don't have a plan. people ask me, Megan, what do you want to do in 5 years? And I was like, I didn't know what I want to do 5 years ago. I mean, the only thing I can say is keep working on yourself, be that lifelong learner, be curious, take opportunities. People ask for volunteers. Everybody's like, oh, I don't want to do that. Say yes. Those are opportunities to learn new things. I signed up for different opportunities in each role I was in the state, and I'm using those skills now. And I'm like, oh my gosh, who would have known? Who would have known? And keep trying. Be resilient. Just keep hanging on. There's so many things that could be stacked against you. People don't know how you may be suffering inside. We don't do a lot of, I'm glad you all talk about self-care, because in the Black community, historically, we haven't really done a good job of talking about mental health and caring for ourselves, because we haven't really ever had that space to do. We just had to keep moving on in the face of just ridiculous oppression. But I just want people to know that you don't have to have a plan, and it's okay. Just keep working on yourself. Keep trying to be a better person. Keep trying to learn and grow, and it'll come together. And ask for help. It's okay. We have an equity in session series, and I shared that the first time that I needed to learn, I didn't know where to go in the legislative building. It was intimidating. Everything's marble in there. And I was like, it just echoes. And I'm like, I don't know where to go. And I just asked the security folks for help, and they were amazing. It's okay to ask for help. It's okay to admit you don't know. And so that's what I also want to share with the youth that'll be a part of your platform too, is just keep on, and you'll get there.
Thank you. Could everyone give it up for Megan?
Thank you again so much. This has been great. I did just want to leave us with some final words from literary icon and author Toni Morrison that touches on really encompassing everything that we talked about in this conversation today. But she said the very serious function of racism is distraction. It keeps you from doing your work. It keeps you explaining over and over again your reason for being. Somebody says you have no language, and you spend 20 years proving that you do. Somebody says your head isn't shaped properly, so you have scientists working on the fact that it is. Somebody says you have no art, so you dredge that up. Somebody says you have no kingdom, so you dredge that up. None of this is necessary. There will always be one more thing. So I just wanted to share that with you all. Let that sit. And lastly, as Megan said, DEI is a collective effort, and I also don't want to forget the B, because it is belonging. That's like the main goal. But it takes all of us. The thing is that some people say they're too busy for DEI, and marginalized folks are busy experiencing racism. It's all pervasive in our institutions, and that's 24/7. So if you hear someone say that excuse, invite them in to, decenter themselves and have self-awareness to understand that we don't get to take a break from racism or oppression, and it takes all of us, and those particularly in positions of power, to be our sponsors and advocate for those that are not in the spaces that we have not been included in. So I just wanted to leave you all with those last words. And again, as Megan covered, DEIB also touches on intersectionality. It's more than just race and gender. So also to consider that. And I did want to share that we wrapped season 1 of our podcast this past month, but we are launching season 2 this coming fall. So if you all are interested in following along and hearing more stories of uplifting and inspirational Black professionals, leaders, and scholars in the Seattle area, we would love if you'd follow us on Instagram at Identity Unboxed and hear all of our latest updates. And we're just so grateful. I'll also pass it to Brad now to share about youth care.
Yeah, so just quick shout out to Youth Care. You see the flyers. Thank you to the folks that brought in those donations. If you scan the QR code, you'll see our little Amazon wish list on there, so you don't have to give anything today or at all if you don't want to. But if you can, I am the community engagement in-kind manager, so I directly oversee our in-kind department. When you donate blankets, shoes, shampoo, whatever the case may be, if you have a service you could donate, I make sure that it gets directly into the hands of our youth and facilitate that. So we appreciate all the support. Like Tiana said earlier, inflation is up and people ain't giving the way they should. So I understand the pockets might hurt, but feel free to take a picture of the flyer. And if at any point you come across some extra money, maybe donate a blanket. You never know who it may help.
Thank you so much, Brad. And again, anything helps. So $5, $1, whatever you could do,
And
it all adds up.
you can donate your time. There's a QR code to volunteer. So if you want to serve a meal, that's an option too.
Love it. Yeah. And I also, lastly, I know I've said lastly multiple times, but this is actually lastly. We are always accepting nominations. So if you know any Black professionals, like executives, different fields, like we're really trying to focus on amplifying Black professionals in STEM because we've had a hard time finding folks in that area. So please submit nominations that you have. That's how we've really been able to connect with a lot of these people. It's like through community. It's through these relationships that we've built over time. So you can submit those to our Instagram as well.
Awesome.
We are so grateful for your support, and thank you for listening to Identity Unboxed.
Authenticity is your guide to cast an impact on the world that you will be proud of. Signing off with pride, Tiana
and Brad.
Thank you so much.